Greetings, everyone from around the world, in theory at least. I'm in New York, and my partner here, Evelina, is in Melbourne, Australia. So we have the planet covered in that regard, at least. Welcome to our event tonight, our webinar on strategic storytelling, how thriving fashion brands win while others lose. And even for those of you who are not involved with fashion, hopefully you also find some value here for whatever line of work, even for your personal branding. You'll find some benefits in terms of the skills and strategies we'll discuss tonight. Just quick introduction before I turn it over to Evelina, that I'm a global communications advisor and media strategist. I've been fortunate enough to have lived on 4 continents, from the US to Europe down to Southern Africa and over to Asia and China for 5 years. And so I work now with a range of clients from Chinese tech companies to African nonprofits. And among my specialties now are fashion brands, fashion clients, specializing in fashion sustainability and storytelling. And here's Evelina for her to introduce herself. Go ahead, Evelina.
Thank you, Michael. Michael and I just connected not so long ago, and we had this really insightful conversation about the fashion industry and building trust and communication. So we thought, okay, we'd love to share this with the wider community. So here we are. About me, I have come from a fashion design background. I went through a really toxic fashion degree. I was really burnt out. I ended up in hospital, really questioning everything and what I saw my future like, where I wanted to work, what I wanted to do. And as I work with more and more fashion brand founders, I feel like this narrative really repeats itself and is so common. So for me, as I went into this journey of self-discovery after having that health issue, I realized that I love working in this marketing, fashion, business writing space. I always freelance for different magazines in Australia and overseas as well. Then I moved overseas. I worked with different companies, from Startup Bootcamp, which is like an accelerator program. I worked with Impact Hub, which was about sustainable businesses, and a lot of really smaller fashion brands, and now working with service-based and fashion businesses to communicate better, and especially in this age of AI, and build out this sales infrastructure that sounds really human and really like you, to help you get more of your audience to have a look at what you're offering as well. I absolutely love it. In the last few years, I've worked with and written for some top 1% executives. I've written for Amazon Web Services and a range of agencies and fashion clients as well. So I'm really excited and happy to be sharing this with you today. And Michael, you've got a really interesting story too that you can touch on a little bit more.
Well, at least one thing for the benefit of the audience, because I could go on and on about myself. It's one of my favorite topics. But actually, in terms of bringing value to anyone listening today, as you know, we're all living in a world filled with misinformation, disinformation, fake news, scammers, that sort of thing. And one thing I've been able to do over the years is apply my background. My background is as a foreign correspondent, an international journalist. I reported from 30 different countries, from post-communist Central and Eastern Europe to Southern Africa to Central Asia. And one thing I do with my communications is I apply a certain journalist skepticism to the content that I see. Whenever I work with visiting their website, their social media channels, looking at how, not just effective, what does effective mean, but how persuasive they are in terms of the use of concrete, credible, even verifiable evidence to prove, okay? To prove that they mean what they say, to prove their results, prove their impact, whatever claim they're making, okay? And so what we're going to be talking about tonight is specifically how this global trust crisis is affecting even the fashion industry. As one example, but one that touches us all, since it's not even $1 billion industry, it's $1 trillion global industry, the fashion industry, that touches all of us. And the numbers are quite overwhelming. I'll get to just a few of them in a moment, okay? But what I'd like to do is share my screen. Let's see if it works. Just some of the big picture here about the challenge we face. And then what I'm going to do is, I guess I should have laid out some of the format tonight. So first we're going to lay out the big picture, explain to you what the situation is now regarding trust and the fashion industry, how it's affecting the fashion industry, and then moving on to some skills and strategies for how you and your brand can create content, trust-building content, specifically a core message about yourself, but then to back that up, whatever you're going to say about yourself, to back that up with credible evidence, and even how to create your own origin story or brand story to resonate with your target audience. Okay? And please, Evelina, of course, we're going to be going back and forth here. As you see with this first slide, I have this visual just that we're all swimming in this sea of brands where every brand we come across, unsurprisingly, has a self-interest to claim how wonderful they are. Okay? And all of us has a question of media literacy and to protect ourselves from those that are lying or exaggerating. We all need to develop this skill of identifying who is whose claim is more credible. Let me explain something about especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs or even climbing the career ladder. In my experience living on 4 continents, I've discovered that there are essentially 2 types of audience. Evelina, can you see the 2 audiences here?
Yeah, we can see it.
On the one hand are the sheep. With all due respect to our family and friends, some of them are sheep-like, meaning following blindly. If there's a charismatic leader or someone of influence we trust for some reason, we may follow blindly and unthinkingly if they tell us, for example, that this phone is the best phone out there. Or if they there's a sign out on the corner here in Manhattan that says New York City's best pizza. According to whom? Okay? Just to become more skeptical. But on the right-hand side is our target audience. The thinkers, the critical thinkers who are not going to immediately consume what we tell them, but are going to demand evidence, demand proof to support our claims. I want to hit you with a few numbers, some very striking facts and figures. Can you see this? Highlighted in yellow. According to the 2023 Edelman Trust Barometer, 81% of consumers say they must trust a brand before buying it. Okay? And then if you look at the line below, this lack of trust, if there's a lack of trust, it leads directly to lost sales, loyalty, reputation. Okay? Sales and conversions drop, hesitation to buy your brand if they don't trust you, if they don't see you as credible. Another statistic from PricewaterhouseCoopers 2024 Global Consumer Insights Survey, 55% of consumers stop buying from brands they don't trust. Here's another one. According to McKinsey's State of Fashion 2024, 67% of global consumers consider sustainability as a factor before they purchase. Only 37% trust brand claims. These numbers are very striking, okay? Especially when it comes to greenwashing, the idea of just throwing money at a problem and claiming to be eco-friendly, conscious fashion, ethical fashion, whatever it may be, okay? And then looking at some of the costs. Now, I thought tonight I would also even give one example, one case study of Shine, the Chinese brand. I lived in Beijing for 5 years, but I do a lot of positive things, working with a lot of positive Chinese brands. But this one, of course, has come up for criticism. And I want to give you some idea of how a skeptical consumer like myself analyzes a website, okay? Now, Shine itself has come under a lot of criticism regarding a lack of transparency in their supply chain, also labor rights. Okay, some controversy about whether they use slave labor or not. I'm not going to give an opinion one way or the other because I'm not on the ground to prove these things. But certainly there's been a lot of criticism of Shine and how they produce their products, their fast fashion. Okay, but if you look at their website, they're also fudging the language a bit. If you want to be more effective, more persuasive, I would avoid this kind of language where they say, we are working hard to drive continued progress. Working hard doesn't say much at all. Okay, there's no evidence to prove that they're working hard. What I encourage my clients to do is, if you're going to make a claim like, oh, we're working hard to, quote, reduce our impact, then I would hyperlink that claim right there so that your consumer, your reader, can click on that and it goes directly to your evidence-driven content to prove that you actually are taking these steps. Right now, these are just empty words about how they're working hard. Next, even looking further at their website, they're using aspirational language. Literally, they're saying, we have aspirations. What does that mean? One day, I aspire to go to the moon. I aspire to play in the World Cup. Aspirations mean nothing, okay? Essentially, especially from a skeptical perspective. Here, they want to become a preferred brand, top-ranked employer, preferred brand partner, preferred responsible purchasing partner, et cetera, responsible corporate citizen. I'm glad they aspire to do that, but there's no evidence that they have. Lastly, there's a famous line about lies, damn lies, and statistics, okay? If you're going to use numbers as evidence, again, I'm looking at this journalistically. Now they're saying, according to our 2024 highlights, we have had 4,288 audits, okay? Now, that number by itself may sound like a lot. It may be a little. We have no context, no perspective. What we need they would be smarter, wiser if they were to show how over the years, over the past 1, 2, 5, 10 years, we've increased the number of audits, okay, of our inspections. Just to throw a number out there, okay, or 133,000 training hours. I mean, the message, they want you to believe that they are doing a lot. But a more powerful message is that we're increasingly taking more and more steps. We're increasingly committed and dedicated to this issue, okay? I don't want to dominate too much the conversation, but Patagonia is seen as a positive example, just FYI. And if you look at their website, okay, they are much more specific when talking about how they're tackling that carbon neutral is not enough. They're being much more specific about what exactly their results are. They have reports here to, as at least their form of evidence, is the start of some credible, believable evidence. Also here, they have statements that how we hold ourselves accountable, okay? And they're asking you, the consumer, to hold them accountable. And by the way, lastly, they also have storytelling, okay? And according to the research, just one last thing, but before I turn it back over to Evelina, is according to the research, this is the 1-2 punch that all brands must have, which is evidence, the credibility to prove you mean what you say, to prove, like here you see measurable data to support whatever claim you're making. And then how do you present it? Well, of course you could present it in a dry, dull environmental impact report or social impact report. Instead, we're talking about websites and social media channels. And so the benefit of storytelling, which resonates with your audience, connects, and in which you can share what you truly care about, what you represent, and your core messages through what I call strategic storytelling. So let me pause there for a minute. Evelina, by the way, is it back on?
Wow, Michael, that was so great. And it's like so clear how your journalistic side of like really digging and analyzing comes in so clearly here. So yeah, it's like really wonderful. And I think for everyone to take note that on the surface, when somebody makes these vague claims that, okay, it might sound interesting and pretty, and especially in the fashion field where it's such a visual, elusive industry. But if somebody starts digging, you can get caught out so easily. And once something is up on the internet, even if you take it down, it's not gone permanently. Like, you don't know what someone has done with that information. So just being like really conscious and really aware of what you're posting and backing up your claims from day one. If you're not sure, then, go back, do that research, do that investigating before you do. And yeah, Michael, that's such a big strength of yours And you can see that journalism investigation side coming in so strongly. And also, I just want to mention, if anybody's got any questions, please do post them. I can see them and I'll pop them up on the screen, even if it's not right away. But we're happy to make this, really valuable and interactive. So if we can get to it straight away or towards the end, please do pop them in. And carrying on from what you were saying, Michael, once you do have done all this analysis and the investigation, it's also important to understand why consumers need that trust and what is at stake if you don't address it. Again, I'll go through a couple of data points as well. This is from a Deloitte study from this year, I believe. So nearly 3/4, 70% of those familiar or experimenting with AI, and I want to talk about AI straight after this, because I think it's a really important topic to mention because it feeds in so perfectly with what's happening today, say that the increasing popularity of it makes it harder for them to trust what they see online. And now there's so much skepticism and scamming, like you mentioned, Michael, and a lot of it is actually coming from these new technologies that are being developed. Some people, depending on how much experience you have working with it, can pick up on it more easily than perhaps others. But this AI conversation is so strong because it's driving a lot of mistrust. And for a brand in the past who may have had a couple of claims that were true and correct, now the average consumer is more skeptical than ever. We live in this modern society. AI is unavoidable. So what can we do as brand owners, as professionals working in the field, to situate ourselves as genuinely trustworthy and show what you're doing and the claims that you have are genuine and correct? So when we are talking about this consumer need, I want to give a disclaimer when you're working with AI is never put anything into it that you wouldn't publicly share, because we don't know what happens to this data and information, whether it's today or 5 years down the track. So any personal, any private things, keep them out. Just as I'm talking about this, I like to mention it. And what we're seeing now, and I think it does have a lot to do with this AI, is a lot of founder-led businesses having a really strong moment. And the example I want to bring in is the founder of Club Peppermint. The founder's name is Katie Arnold, and it's a relatively new business that started around COVID. And it's actually, a lot of her story is to do with her personal life and what drove her to it. There was a family tragedy that happened, and that inspired her to create something with her life and follow her meaning. And that goes back to this idea of what you were talking about, Michael, the strategic communication, that now being open and honest about who you are also as a person, as well as those literal stats and claims, works really well together to build that trust. Because at the end of the day, there's so many brands out there, there's so many companies. The chances that your product or service is so unique that nobody else has anything even remotely similar is very, very low, unfortunately. Even though, as creative people, we like to think that what we offer is so different, but we do live in a big world. So what does make you unique is yourself, and your humanness. So when you can blend that with these really technical elements of what Michael was talking about, the data and the statistics, and going really deep and understanding why you're doing something, what is the impact your company has, even if it's something little, and even being open about the fact that, we know we're not perfect, but we are working on X, Y, Z, and this is our plan, and reporting back to it. And so that's why Patagonia has such a wonderful reputation, because they're so open and honest about all this. So in saying that, what actually makes good communication? Because we've touched on this more data-driven side. I'm touching more on this human element of being more open, more honest with your public. And I know it can be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people who are more introverted or more private to say, oh my God, I need to put myself out there on the internet. But there's different levels and ways that different people can do that. Yeah. So we want to talk to you about some of that. And one of the most key pieces of that is that origin story that Michael is an expert in, which he'll share with you.
Well, just one thing before I get to that, absolutely, because we're not just analyzing a situation, but also trying to provide some solutions. So yes, how to create that trust building content to persuade your target audiences. And I just want to let you know that some of you in the audience who watch this tonight or in the future may be thinking, well, I don't have consumers per se. But I want you to know that all this is relevant for any individual or organization. If you're approaching and they're also a certain critical thinking, high level, skeptical audience that will demand as much evidence as possible to prove that you can deliver the results that you promise, or if it's donors for your nonprofits, or if you try to attract media attention, the journalists will be skeptical and want to know that you're truly on the front lines of your issue, or that your product is truly as effective as you claim it to be, that sort of thing. Or even if you're just climbing the career ladder and you're looking to persuade employers. It's important to recognize, I see that in strategic communications, we all have a natural wall of suspicion, or at least skepticism, between strangers. So for me, the goal with strategic communications is how to lower that wall of skepticism, build a bridge of trust, and reduce the risk of any form of partnership or support. Okay? And one way to do that is with what I call trust building content. Let me get to that now to share some of these skills with you. Once again, it requires me to share the screen. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me give this a whirl.
And I see Tom has posted a question as well that I've popped up on the screen, which I think ties in really perfectly with what you're about to talk about, Michael.
So first of all, I don't just call it storytelling. I call it strategic storytelling. And here I came up with my own definition. Not just any storytelling, but storytelling for a purpose, as our intent is to achieve a strategic objective, especially, as I write here, when we or our organization are under pressure to prove something persuasively, such as results or impact, or on LinkedIn to prove that we are who we say we are, that we're doing what we say we're doing, but especially that we are as good as we claim to be. Okay? And so, as I said here, a key component to overcome our audience's skepticism is concrete, meaning specific, credible, meaning believable, verifiable, meaning can be confirmed, can be proven, evidence, and especially to present it transparently. What I've learned about transparency is that those organizations, whether they be for-profit companies, nonprofits, government agencies, whomever, those that have results and are truly confident are happy to be transparent and to share their results, share their impact. Those that are less confident are more opaque. Okay, they are more inclined to want to conceal and to be less transparent. Why? Because they don't have the results to back up their words. Okay, that's why we all need to develop what I once learned it as a bullshit deflector, since the BS is flying at us every day, that we all need to develop a finely tuned BS deflector. And just to let you know, the same principles that we're talking about tonight of strategic storytelling, I apply to many forms of storytelling. I call it sustainability storytelling, ESG, which is environmental social governance storytelling, CSR, corporate social responsibility storytelling, SDG, for all those international nonprofits and others that care about the sustainable development goals, storytelling, even DEI storytelling. Okay, when I know this is out of fashion right now, there's a lot of pressure on the DEI world, but for all those companies that are claiming to do meaningful things in the world of DEI, again, the need for evidence-driven, even humanized storytelling. So let me explain now about the brand stories and origin stories. Actually, you know what? Wait. Before I get to the brand stories, can you see this the screen, Evelina? 6 forms of strategic content?
Yes, we can see that.
Good. I want you to understand that there are multiple forms of this strategic storytelling. There's essential proof, as you see here, if you want to take a screenshot or review the video later. Anything that documents who you are, what you do, what you say. Okay, it could be a selfie of yourself at work. okay, or doing an activity that proves that you are who you say you are, doing what, or at least if not proving, it's one brick in the foundation of starting to prove and persuade an audience that you are who you say you are, doing what you claim to be doing. This is basic chronicling of who you are, what you do, okay, in written or photographic evidence form. Then there's the origin story, which I will get to, your relevant backstory, which talks about where your journey begins, how it evolved up to today, and which you can express your inspirations, motivations, passions, values, dedication, competence, commitment, all those things, okay? Then I also talk about, I won't talk about it tonight, but impact stories, how to prove with evidence that you are truly as impactful as an organization, or that your product or that your service is as impactful as you claim. The truth is, we all need to prove our impact as professionals. As a global communications advisor, media strategist, I myself need to produce impact stories to prove that I truly am as impactful on my clients as I claim to be. Partner stories. If you are trying to attract partners and you recognize that trust is an issue, then this is another form of content that you can tell the story of your existing partnerships, and even telling the story of the origin of that partnership and how and why each of you began to trust each other to become trusted partners. Because then the message would be, if those partner stories are on your website, the message would be to your target audience, hey, they trusted me, you can trust me. Step by step. Again, these are bricks in the foundation of your evidence-driven content. I also have a form of content that I call how the sausage is made. For example, your supply
Sorry,
chain.
Michael, can I just jump in? There's a couple of comments that the screen is a little bit blurry. Would you mind putting it as full screen so the whole slide
I'm so sorry.
takes up? So then it's a bit bigger, I think, because there's
Is that better?
a bit of text. Yeah, is that better, everyone?
It is. I hope. Can you see it better?
For me,
Evelina?
it's better.
Good.
Yeah, it's more focused and closer up.
That's right. And then how the sausage is made. It could be about your supply chain, or if you're talking about your product is made with organic cotton, let's say, okay? The finest ingredients, whatever it may be, okay? Then there's value to you showing, not just telling. I learned this in journalism school long ago, University of Missouri School of Journalism, that this principle of show me, don't just tell me, okay? So then there's value to that sort of content to lift the curtain, okay, and show how exactly a process or program works, illuminate the origin and evolution to show the global supply chain, for example. And lastly, thought leadership, okay, even to prove that you have a finger on the pulse of trends, okay, showcasing your thoughts, ideas, opinions, analysis, whether you're a founder and CEO or any professional who's been at it for 5, 10, 20 or more years, okay, sharing your opinions, analysis, insights, experience, commentary, that sort of thing. That's another topic, but this is also strategically to build your brand as a thought leader, okay? Now, back to, before I get to the brand story, I should say something about the core message, because I promised that when describing, and I'm sorry if I'm going too long, Evelina. But I have a 4-step method, immodestly called the Jordan 4-step formula, okay? And simply put, it's who, what, why, how. For you, each of you there, this is an essential part of my own strategic communications. I'm always thinking through, first of all, who exactly is my target audience and why? Okay? Why should they read this? Why should they care? What can they learn from it? How can they benefit? Thinking for you to be able to visualize your target as clearly as possible, certain demographics, certain details, so then you can aim your words, your content as effectively and persuasively as possible. Otherwise, you're firing at them blindly if you don't have a clear picture of who your target audience is. Next, what exactly do you want to say? Why exactly that? What point, what argument do you want to make? What idea, what message do you deliver directly to their heart and mind? Okay? Or what story do you want to tell? But here's the third point is very difficult, very challenging, which is to justify why exactly say this or say that, this point, that argument, that, or deliver this message. In fact, this, if you look at my filter, It requires empathy, not just for you to sit at your laptop and say, I want to write about this or I want to say that, but to think through, if you were in the shoes of your target audience, why exactly do you think that your target audience would find your content interesting, persuasive, valuable, whatever it may be? Why should they care if you were in their shoes? Okay. And then lastly, how? Once you've made this airtight argument as to what exactly you want to say and why, what your core message is, then how do you want to deliver your points, your argument, your message? And for number 3, the why exactly, here's where we get to the core message. Just one thing I want to say about this, okay? I believe every piece of content, and even this webinar, should have its own core message, okay? Next time you need to give a presentation to your colleagues, okay, a PowerPoint, whatever it is, to think through that if I'm going to speak for 1 hour, or if Evelina and I are going to speak for 1 hour, what's the one thing we would want you to take away from this? If you're only going to remember one thing from our webinar, okay, what are you going to remember and why? And the way I do this, I now do this backward. Okay, let's say about your product, your service, your brand. What's your core message? I do it backward. Instead of just thinking, what do I want them to know about me? I think after you have watched this webinar, later tonight, tomorrow, or 1 week, if someone were to say, hey, what did you learn from that webinar? What was that webinar about? You're going to say, oh, that was a webinar about trust building, how to build trust, to overcome skepticism, okay? If you, in your mind, say, yes, that's the core message I want them to remember, I want it to be most memorable, then take that and start from the beginning. Make that the focus of your content, okay? So meaning going about it in a backwards sort of way. What do I want to be most memorable? And then making that the focal point of all your content, okay? Make that the spine or the thread through your content. How clear is that, Evelina?
Oh, this is fantastic. Like that you're walking us through your framework and what you do with your own clients. So it's very valuable.
Well, thank
and
you.
Yeah, anyone who has some feedback or thoughts, please do leave them in the comments.
Yes.
I've starred a few that we can touch on and talk about a little bit later on as well.
Well, good. Thank you very much. Well, let me just jump to, I know we don't have infinite time here. Let me jump to brand stories, especially how you yourself can create your own origin story, okay? First of all, as you see here, there's a lot of research on the benefits of a brand story, okay? Especially how you sharing your brand story resonates with the heart and mind of your target audience, especially when it comes to fashion consumers, to make them care, make them like you, persuade them that, let's say in the case of sustainability, or that you truly are conscious, okay? How to do that with an origin story. Let me give you one example. Oh, actually, let me show you how to do that first. Well, let's say, okay, let me share a case study, okay? This is Britta Cabanos, one of my partners as well. She is the founder of Inside Fashion Design and the Conscious Fashion Design Academy based in Portland, okay? And she said that she was sometimes struggling with her own messaging and to really resonate with her audience. So we talked about her core message as to what she wants people to know about her and her organization. And we then brought to life, see, this is a training that I had earlier this year, in which you see Britta in the upper left corner. Now, the story we came up with, okay, her origin story, okay? We opened small with the key moment, the moment of when she decided to found Inside Fashion and the Conscious Fashion Design Academy. She painted a picture. She was vulnerable, talking about her own frustrations, even her own trauma within the fashion industry. She was working hard, but felt exploited, didn't feel supported, always sought, hoped for some emotional support and some mentorship, some guidance, some coaching, never found it. And then one day, if you were to read, so we're painting a picture, pulling the reader in. And then one day, she had this epiphany. She organized an event, a gathering where others joined, and then she realized, hey, this is exactly what I need to do, is to create a space where a community can be formed, a community of support, mentorship, resources. So then if you were to read this on her website, you'll see that then it opens up to the big picture of her organization, okay? And even why her organization matters. And then this is the first 200 words of her story. In there so far, she's sharing her core values, that she cares. That's a core message. She cares and is doing something about it, and how she's bringing together people for a purpose X, Y, Z, and even sharing some of the activities of that organization. Then, if for those readers who are now drawn in and start to care more about Britta and her organization, that is ultimately the goal. Now she's starting to resonate with her audience, okay? Making them care more about her and her organization. Then we can go into the deep past and share. For example, I even asked her and drew this out of her. Who was it in her family as a child? Was it someone who planted the seed of fashion, of environmental concern, of conscious fashion? And she told me the story about her father. And then I said, hey, get us a photo of you with your father, okay? And then she tells a story from there, and you can visit her website for more, okay? Just real quick, a second example of a fellow Australian, by the way. This is Jude Kingston, who founded a nonprofit for mental health in fashion. And on her website, she shares some of her backstory of the trauma she experienced. And as you read this, you start to care more about her and her organization. It's a very effective way to pull someone in, that she becomes then the human face, shares of her organization, shares some of her vulnerability. Now, I do want to share a couple slides as to how to tell this. I call this Darwinian storytelling. Darwin, as you may recall, was focused on the origin and evolution of species. Well, I believe every story, every brand, every product has an origin and evolution too. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this, but you can see that you can identify where exactly does your story begin and why. This is a timeline, a chronological timeline, deep past, more recent past, back up to the present, and even where you and your brand, your product are going from here. The origins, why does it start there? But then crucially, the evolution. How does your story change or evolve over time? And why does it change, evolve the way it does? Then back up to the present. If you've done an effective job of providing this backstory, now the reader understands where exactly you are, your brand, your product, your service. They're nodding along. They're stroking their chin thoughtfully. They get it. And then you can even finish off your story with where do you go from here and why there. And you can share your aspirations, your goals, and explain that. And just one last thing. I want you to know there's an essential difference between a simple feature about yourself or about one of the individuals you impact, and what I call a big picture feature, which, as I showed you with the structure, you open small, this diamond here. You open small, but then you connect dots to the big picture, okay? With the broader context of the big picture of why your organization, why your brand, your product, your service matters. And then you can, with the remaining part of the story, you can then fold in the Darwinian backstory, okay? More details of your origin and evolution, but opening with some dramatic storytelling, that moment where you had your revelation, your epiphany about your brand, your product, your service, that sort of thing, okay? So, are you still there? It's very quiet over there. I'm just staring at my screen. So,
wow, thank you. I'm learning from you, Michael. So I'm sure everyone else is too. And it's really good, like, to understand that theory and the thinking behind everything you do. And you're so articulate and meticulous about every element. Of course, linking back to that journalism background. So thank you for sharing that. And if anyone has any thoughts, do leave them in the comments. We do read them all.
Just to ask you, what challenges do your clients face?
Yeah, I think for them, a lot of the time when it's a smaller business, it's this hesitation to open yourself up and actually be honest about what's happening. Because a lot of the time, you see big businesses, they're doing really well, it looks really glamorous on the outside, but then when you're a small business owner, like 80-90% of it is a grind. It's difficult. It's solving problem after problem. And they want to share like this highlight reel, which we see all over social media. But then the reality is actually it's not that. Yeah, there are some highs and they feel even better when it's come after a big wave of challenges. But being a business owner is like you're constantly solving problems. And for them to reset their mindset to be like, it's actually okay, just because I've had this problem or this setback, it doesn't mean that I'm failing at what I'm doing. It's actually a really powerful part of my story. And I'm going to share that because those are actually the parts that your audience connects with and see themselves in and say, oh, Michael went through this experience. I had something similar. Like I have more trust and I have more respect for him now that I'm more willing to look into what he's doing or what he's offering.
You know what? You're making such a good point, because one word that comes up often is authenticity. Okay? It's not just being vulnerable and sharing something, but being authentic. And that's, on the one hand, that's something that really resonates with the audience, right? That how to share a story in which others can identify themselves. I call it the shared humanity. Okay? That I've been fortunate enough to have lived in China and Africa and all that. And the idea of, through storytelling, how to share a story with people thousands of miles away who've never been to your country, by illuminating even the shared humanity. But by doing that and being authentic with your story, it also overcomes the other challenge you mentioned, which is AI. Okay? Nowadays, everyone's so hooked on ChatGPT, and the content now is starting to look so generic and so repetitive, right? Everyone using the same words, essentially, right? The same format. That one way to overcome that is with authenticity, okay? That the machines, AI, can't replicate your story or your thoughts, feelings, emotions, opinions, that sort of thing. Or even if you're telling the story of others, let's say your workshop, your partners, even to include direct quotes from them to give them voice, give voice to the voiceless, is something that AI can't do unless it's making up quotes. But you present it in a very authentic, real, humanizing way, then that will resonate with your audience, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I'm just being conscious of everyone's time, and maybe this is like a part 2 of our conversation that would be really helpful, and something I wanted to touch on as well, like how actually can we blend this human element and the storytelling and all this brand building that you're talking about, Michael, and then also using AI in a humane way to help us get content out there. Because at the end of the day, we do live in a content society. It's just the reality. And if you're not putting yourself out there, people just don't know you exist. So it's finding that balance. And I've got some frameworks I use to do that too. And as a quick example, and then
Go ahead,
I want to jump into the questions as well to give you all the chance to ask and to answer the ones you've popped into the box as well. Is I've been working with a client who she has 6 decades of experience in the fashion industry, like incredible person, incredibly accomplished, is an absolute expert in the field, but nobody knew about her work, what she did. She didn't put herself out there, zero marketing, zero content. And what we did together was create this story about her, really verify everything she's done, and she's written a series of books using this content, get her message out there. And going from zero in the first week, once we implemented this basic marketing funnel, which I call the email content system, she made 2 sales already. And it's not huge numbers, but it shows that building this trust, being open and putting yourself out there, it works, and people trust you and they respect you if you've got the claims to validate as well. And one thing, another part, I think it might be worth popping it into a part 2, is like, I'd love to go through some really tactical skills of how can you use the content you already have and this origin story, and then apply it to different types of content, which we know the most common ones these days are across your website, across your emails, across your social content. So it all sounds aligned, but also is doing the job of each platform to build trust over time, because we know now it doesn't take just one point. The chances of someone seeing an ad about you, even if it's really like it makes them cry and you've shared a beautiful story, and buying from you straight away is so low. Like it's a process. I just wanted to add that in for everyone to think about, that it's not just doing this one piece of content. Like that is the groundwork, laying that foundation for the brand story, but thinking about like, how does that apply to all your channels that you have?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So would you like to address some of those questions? I don't see the questions. What do you see?
Yeah, so I'll pop.
Yeah.
Here we go. Tamil made an interesting comment about like AI doesn't have the creative soul, and you have to have pure, authentic abilities, because AI is just like a pencil or paintbrush. You have to have some creative, original abilities, and also a true story that resonates with your audience. Like, I totally agree with you, Tamil. Like, I think AI has this power of efficiency in terms of speeding things up and analyzing large chunks of data, but it will never have this soul, which is something that you need to put in there with your stories and your voice. And a powerful thing I do for myself and for my clients is using voice notes and storytelling, again, like you, Michael, to pull that natural language out, because usually, especially if you're not a writer, which, you know, not most of us are not, like I am, so I know how to do it, but for a normal business owner, like if you're not a writer and you sit down and you're starting to write all these elements, it can be really stressful and anxiety producing, and you're staring at a blank page and you don't know where to begin. I actually use a lot of voice dictation and transcribing to start on that journey and pull out certain topics and themes. And I call it like a voice print, creating your voice print using your own voice, the things you say, the words you say. And a lot of my clients come back and say, how did you write that to sound like exactly as something I would say? And that's because I've done this voice print process of pulling out the stories, also using this AI to analyze it and be like, these are the common themes, these are the trigger points, and pulling that in with literal words that this person uses. So it's finding that middle point.
Oh boy. So you're training the AI to think and act like a person, basically? To think and act and
Okay, so I have this process. I just recorded a YouTube video about it. It'll come out in the next week or two. Maybe I have to link it. I've got a way of training the GPT to basically download your brain into them. So it doesn't recycle the information from, you know, how with the AI, it just pulls the average of everything on the internet. But this is like, I've reprogrammed it, so it's pulling the information from everything inside my brain. Yeah, so it's a bit trippy.
You know, I've been asked so many times, you know, like, do you feel that AI is a threat to you, the work that you do? And I've been holding the line saying, you know, that there will always be a need for original content, right? Original, authentic content and original research. Fact gathering, okay, right? Out in the field, let's say. But now that I hear you say that, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I may be going extinct soon. You know, if you're training the Chat GPT, for example, to think and even embrace your words and way of saying things and thinking things and all that.
But it's content that's come from me. Like, it's not the AI coming up with ideas. It's like things I've said. It's my frameworks that I've developed. And then even, this is a little bit off topic, but also, you know, as I said, we live in such a content society. It's like, it's just not possible for one person to pump out so much content. So how do you upcycle what you have? So for example, like for me, I can use a podcast transcript that I've done. It's what I've said. It's my ideas. It's original content. And I can formulate it into like 1 or 2 emails. I can turn it into posts. I can turn it into reels. I can turn it into another YouTube video. I can, what else? Long form articles. So from that one big main idea that I've shared using my voice, so it's using my words, I can do like 20, 30, however many pieces of content and original.
That's amazing. So, and Megan agrees with you. You have to train it.
Yeah.
She uses AI daily. I guess, I can see to some degree, some of us, like myself, we're dinosaurs trying to hold the line and insisting on my own original content, but I can't keep up when people like you and others are basically producing daily content, right? Feeding the system content. And so I guess I need to learn from you and others for sure. And as Michael Roberts said, trust but verify with AI for sure. For sure. It's not an imperfect system, or it's not a perfect
Totally.
system. It has flaws.
Yeah. And Megan
Cool.
is saying, yeah, you have
Yeah.
to train it. And
Yes.
Megan, maybe you and I can do how to train it
But
together.
I think you may also be creating a Frankenstein. Maybe it turns on you one day. So
Yeah.
what
There's a question for you from Artem, Michael.
Yes.
I've popped it up on the screen.
Yes. When brands try to fix their storytelling on their own, what do they usually miss? And before working with it, what kept your clients from solving those challenges? We'd love to hear that. Wow, that's a complex. I think we all need an audience, a sounding board. It's difficult to tell our own story because we could go on and on, as I went on and on earlier in this session. I think that we all need a sounding board who can help us identify what are truly relevant details versus irrelevant details. What's truly necessary and essential for our target audience to know to follow the story as clearly and comfortably as possible. So I think sometimes when we're telling our story on our own, we get lost in the weeds, or we can't see the forest for the trees. We're inside the forest looking up, only seeing trees versus standing on the outside and seeing the big picture. So I think we all do need a trusted advisor, someone we can turn to bounce our ideas off of for some, not criticism, but critique, some constructive critique as to what, as a test audience, what do you find most interesting, most relevant, most compelling, most persuasive, that sort of thing. But what was the second part? Let me see. When they try to fix the storytelling, what do they usually miss? And also, by the way, Artem, thank you for the question. Really, I think that not enough brands and products and services appreciate the idea of the two audiences. That for that smart but skeptical audience, to prove whatever you say, to back up. You're free to say whatever you want, but if you want to be believed, you must back it up with evidence. So I myself hyperlink extensively, okay? Because I recognize that even individually, how important trust is as a part of the process, trying to persuade my target audience to believe in me, and then to return to me in the future that, hey, when Michael says something, I can believe him because he always shows, doesn't just tell, he backs it up with some evidence. And then the second part, what kept your clients from solving those challenges before working? I think that kind of answers it is maybe they were too insular and needed some feedback as to what works, what doesn't, and why. Any other questions?
And I'd love to jump in, like just quickly and mention that with this building this trust and reputation it's so easy to break your reputation from one or two like not verifying claims and being caught out. Unfortunately, you can spend years building up a really positive reputation, and then sadly that one thing that you didn't do right will be used against you. So just keeping that in mind as well.
You're right.
To steer aside of caution if you're not sure.
Well, I mean, there's nothing more important in our lives as professionals than our own, for sure. And then how do you protect your reputation? Is by always being, I believe, as transparent and as accountable as possible. I'm not perfect, but certainly trying to be, open and sharing who I am, what I do, and as candid as about how effective I am or not as a professional. With evidence, supporting with evidence. Any other questions? See, that's misleading. The time says an hour 18, but we're just hitting an hour now since we started a little late.
Yeah, like this is from Tamil, just more observation that perhaps you can comment on, Michael, because it's related to your framework. And if anyone has any last questions after that, we can address them and then wrap it up.
Well, I see he made a point about DEI. You know what? At the heart of all this is to prove with evidence, prove impact, prove benefits. That it's nice to have claims, to claim to truly be pro diversity, equity, inclusion, or to be conscious, ethical, eco-friendly, whatever it may be. But really, you see that Tamil as a typical smart, skeptical person, right? We need to work hard if we care with someone like Tamil. A key, by the way, I should have pointed out, there's one thing to be dealing with a smart but skeptical audience, but also there's a difference between a smart but skeptical audience that's open-minded versus a smart but skeptical audience that's closed-minded. So also recognizing that we can only truly appeal to a smart but skeptical, open-minded audience with evidence. Because a closed-minded audience, target audience, we can talk till we're blue in the face and throw facts at them, and they may say, fake news, that sort of thing. Versus, are they open to being persuaded? Go ahead, persuade me, right? And maybe Tamil is someone who might be more persuaded if an organization or a company were to prove persuasively and transparently with evidence that their efforts not only planted seeds to make a difference, let's say, in Black and brown communities, okay, in America, for example, but that they've truly grown roots and now are making a difference, okay, yielding harvest 1 year later, 5 years, 10 years later, that sort of thing. Proof is in the pudding. Go ahead. Evelina, anything else?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. Like, I think, addressing and talking about this proof is the foundation. And when you have the foundation laid out and right, and also, internally you feel so much better. You feel you have a good internal gut instinct because you're doing right by yourself and by your audience. And like you said, Michael, your business isn't for everyone. It just has to speak to the right people. And that's where that research comes in really strongly. And yeah, if you'd like to chat more or you have any more questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to both me and Michael as well.
That's right.
And ask
Absolutely.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, recognizing that tonight we shared skills and strategies which may be quite abstract. And if you at home want to try to apply them yourself with forming a core message or crafting an origin story, please do reach out. In fact, Evelina and I are talking about the possibility of a workshop, actually, to lead people by the hand through the creation of your own origin stories for your platforms, for your website, your social media channels. Even when you have a microphone in your hand and someone says, how did you get here? What's the backstory? Okay. So let us know. And if there's anything else, Evelina, let me know.
Yeah, no, that sums it up really nicely. If you have any comments or feedback for us, anything else you want us to go more in depth into, we can schedule another one. I prepared a guide on the 3 AI tools I use to do this voice system content, which is to do with this voice print that I've developed. So if you'd like that as well, please let me know. I will send it over to you. Things I use every day with my clients and for myself. But thank you so much for joining us.
And you have my slides. Now you see my slides.
And your slides, exactly. Okay. We'll also be sharing this video after. So if there's somebody you think would benefit from it or would enjoy it, please pass it along. We'd love for other people to see it and to learn as well, something for themselves. Let's help each other in this industry.
Thank you for your attention. Let's do this again sometime, Evelina.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.